Yeah, so you wanted to talk about healing.
Yes,
And the headline or the sort of title of the email that you sent me is quite interesting. It says healing is an inside job.
yes,
So
yes.
why don't you break that down for us and explain what you mean by that?
Okay. So healing to me, we're living in a North American kind of culture where everything is external, right? People look at if you were sick, you immediately go to a doctor. He'll maybe prescribe pills or surgery or whatever. But we look at all the answers to our healing as external. And from my own personal experience, as you know, I was ill and healed it. To me, it's an inside job. It's like we have to go within our own selves and see what got us here. And it's not a blame thing at all. It's just about taking responsibility and just really getting to a deeper part of ourselves. I don't think any healing can take. I know even for me, if I've had some problems like with the reflux, I use my mind to try to think I'm going to fix it, and it never works. My mind just starts spinning and spinning, and okay, we'll try this, and we'll try that, and we'll try this. It doesn't work.
Hmm.
But when I let go and I really meditate on it or whatever, it just somehow it just seems to come, and that comes from a deeper place.
Mhm.
And for me personally, I think it comes from a spiritual place.
Right. So one of the questions I had for you is, do you think it's worth trying to unpack the reason for our fixation with the external? You said like as a North American culture where we're fully fixated on the outside, we look to the outside for help and for our remedies. Is that something that we should try to figure out why? Is that helpful in any way to figure out how we came to be this way so that we can reverse that kind of fixation?
I think so. I think one of the big challenges in our North American culture is about our separateness.
Mm.
We don't see that we're all connected, and we don't see that we're connected to nature, to everything that is, and to ourselves and to each other. We're just live in our little houses and do our thing. I mean, there's many of us that have, I think, transcended that and see that we are all connected. And I think that's a really important part. So that's why I think it's important to look and see. It's not just out there.
Mm.
A lot of it is in here. And so it's getting to a deeper place within yourself. And I mean, when I was ill, one of the first things I thought, okay, so how did I get to this place? And I could see why I got sick. It was a stressed out mess.
Mm.
Social worker and on all kinds of committees, 3 boys, big, huge house, big mortgage. I was a mess. So
Hmm.
no wonder I got sick. If I hadn't looked at that, then I would never have been able to heal because I wouldn't have taken responsibility and saying, well, I have to change.
Yeah.
My world outside is going to be the same, but me inside needs to change.
Yeah, that's where the inside job comes in, right? It's
Yeah.
not to say that there aren't external factors, but
Oh, absolutely.
but
Yeah.
so it's interesting that you bring up stress because to me, in my experience and by my observations, stress is always self-created. It's not like an external. Like some people think that stress is in their circumstances. Like, oh, I'm going through a really stressful period in my life because X, Y, and Z. But another person could go through those exact same experiences and not feel stressed. So obviously, it's not in the circumstances. It's something that is, again, an inside job as well.
And that was so clear to me because when I was off for 10 months with the illness that I had, and when I went back to work, I had learned how to meditate and I was eating differently. I was doing all kinds of things. And I did the job very differently. I knew I didn't want to stay in that job, but I wasn't stressed about it anymore because I just didn't let that happen. I would come home and I would meditate and let go of the day.
Right.
And so that, yeah, it's not the circumstances, it's how we deal with the circumstances.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
that's the inside job,
it's
right?
an inside job.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Because you could be stricken with an illness, but your attitude and your sort of mindset around that illness will either help to heal it or make it worse, I guess.
Yeah, and I think this is the same for if it's either physical or emotional. If it's, an emotional, you got depression or whatever it is, I think it's the same. It's much harder when you have depression, for sure, because you're just so depleted inside. But again, that's a big inside job.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and being depleted, even if it's a physiological depletion, you can change your diet. Some of that is geared around what you eat as well, which is external to some extent, but
Yeah.
at the same time, you have to make the decision to change your diet to consume more vegetables and maybe less processed food. Like that part of it comes from within you. So it all starts within, however you dice it. Even if the remedy happens to be external or material in some way, the first step is always internal.
Yeah. Again, it's just taking a look and seeing what you do. And I did a lot of research about this illness that I had. And I'll just explain that mine was an immune disorder. And I was supposed to have my bladder removed, and I chose not to. And I went off work for 10 months, and then I healed it in 2 years. And it was, and again, this is another thing I want to say, is that sometimes an illness has a purpose. And I know my illness had a huge purpose. It took me on a spiritual path. It took me to really investigate how I really wanted to live. And I didn't want to keep doing what I was doing. And being a social worker, I'd been one for a long time, and I was done. And so again, the illness had such a purpose, helped me to redefine my whole life and to look at things differently. And I totally changed my career.
Yeah, and you were able to cure it as well. I mean,
Yeah,
how many
totally.
years ago was that you got
Oh,
diagnosed with that?
20. I was diagnosed in 1994.
Wow.
Well, 93, yeah, around that time, 93, 94, I was diagnosed, but it took a long time to diagnose it. I was ill for over a year.
Yeah.
And
so you if you had made a different decision, you could have been living without a bladder since 1994.
Yeah, right.
But in 2 years, instead, you cured yourself, or made it go away at least, and you still have your bladder.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And you know what? I don't get it. And I'm older now and stuff, and I don't have a lot of issues. Sometimes if I eat anything too acidic, it'll bother it a little bit. But
sure.
Yeah, I have a healthy one, and I'm quite grateful. But again, so much, it wasn't about, I think it wasn't so much for me about healing the illness. So that was really important. For me, it was about healing my life.
And your illness was just one symptom of a bigger sort of pattern, right?
That's it. A whole bigger issue than just, and getting sick was just because I during that time, I was feeling really dissatisfied with life. I had a very good job, made good money. We had a huge house on the waterfront. Kids were healthy and good. I mean, they were boys, they were challenging, but they were good. And the marriage at that time, I'm divorced now, was in decent shape and stuff. And I just was unhappy, and I just couldn't understand why. And it's because I hadn't tuned into that inner part of myself. Right. And I'd said for over a year, I should learn how to meditate. I'd heard about it, should do that. Never did. Until the big brick. And then it's like, well, now I don't have a choice. Now, if I want to get my shit together here, I need to go inside deep.
And so did you have an intuitive, knowing that meditation would somehow help with your illness? Like, how did you make that connection between meditation, which is an Eastern practice, spiritual practice, and this very sort of illness that you had in your body? Like, did you make a connection there, or was it just kind of intuitive?
It was very intuitive. And I don't know where. I probably heard about it somewhere, I mean, I was exposed to a little bit of that, not a lot, because we were in rural Ontario at the time. But and then I started reading a book called Minding the Body, Mending the Body, Mending the Mind by Joan Borsenko. And you're just reading one of her other books. And that's when it hit me. Okay. This is really
the mind and body are related, and this physical illness has mental roots.
An inside job or what? Holy crap. And I cried for half an hour when I recognized that, wow, I have some big work to do. And yeah, and I'm grateful that I had the 10 months to do that.
Yeah.
and had some pretty mystical, crazy experiences when I learned how to really go meditate get into a deep space.
Yeah. Yeah. So with our sort of fixation on the external, one of the points that you made in your email was that tapping into our innate wisdom seems like a foreign concept. And then you say, of course, this is ancient wisdom. So is this what like Jesus was talking about? Is this what, obviously the Buddha was talking about? Is this the kind of the spiritual essence of all religious traditions, what we're talking about here?
I think so. I think, again, they're all like Buddha, especially, is all about, I've studied a little bit about Buddhism, and it's about tuning in and meditating and really letting go of all the externals. But because of the way we live in our cultures, we just don't do that. Everything has to be, we need gratification to come from outside of ourselves. Yeah. Instead of knowing it can just come from within. So I think most people are living that way in the North American culture. And there are many of us that have, like you and me and a lot of our friends that we know, have just decided that, yeah, that's not the right path. It's that we need to, sure, it's nice to have some, external things. I like to live in a nice place. I have nice furniture, I buy clothes. Those are all good. But those don't bring me, what brings me joy and peace is connection with others. And when I can meditate and being in a place of peace, that's what, and that connection to that deeper part, that's that universal energy that's everywhere. Yeah. That is all that is. And when we can tap into that, boy, some wisdom can come. And we both know we can have I've had some nutsy, crazy experiences just by tuning into just being quiet and getting my mind to shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I trust that.
Yeah. Getting high off your own supply. That's always a good feeling.
I like that.
Yeah. People can do it. It can be done.
Yeah, for sure.
So another point that you made that I think is really interesting, you said the healing has to come from a different place than that which created the illness. So can you expand on that a little bit? Can you give us like an example of what you mean by that?
Well, that really came to me in my meditation when this was a while back when I was really struggling with some reflux issues, and I was doing all the things, taking tons of supplements and changing and I was thinking about it all the time. And I thought what's created a lot of the reflux in the first place was stress. And just the way, living externally again, And so I really had this insight. It's like, well, you can't heal it from there. You can't think about it. You can't think, okay, try all these supplements and do all this and change the diet. Blah, 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 blah. It has to come from a place of knowing and a place of an intuitive knowing that, that's what I need to do. And sure, some supplements did help. I take digestive enzymes, which make a big difference. But now I don't have an issue at all. And I had an issue for how many years? Long time, 6 years, I think.
Yeah.
And I really
you were taking a medication for it the whole time,
yes.
weren't you? Yeah.
Yes, right.
So now you're not taking the medication anymore.
No medication,
don't have that problem.
no nothing, not even antacids hardly ever anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess then if what you're saying, if we take that at face value and there's this sort of intuitive knowing that people have, I guess the big question for me then is how can people connect with that intuitive knowing? How can they tap into that wisdom that you're describing that's kind of like deeper than the mind, beyond the mind? And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think meditation for me is one, but I also think we know about psilocybin mushroom, and there are lots of some mystical experience that can come from that get you to a deeper knowing. So I think and just finding a way to quiet this down and looking at your habits, like, do you keep doing the same thing over again, and how can you shift that and change that? And so, and again, I think these experiences that you and I both had they're profound. I mean, one of the things that changed things the biggest for me around the reflux was I had a whole insight when I did an experience, and it was about my relationship with food, that I had used food as a comfort and love since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
My parents used to put me in a room and put food in there. And I was kind of an only child. My brother was about 10 years older than I am. So yeah, it was a lifelong habit. And when I really got that at a core, at a deep level, then it shifted things.
Right. Yeah. And it's interestingly enough, because, again, you've been on this path for a long time and you've had lots of revelations about yourself over the years. That one was so like close to you that it's almost like you couldn't see it
Yes.
without a little nudge, right? That little help.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was shocked. Like, I mean, I kind of knew, I've always known. I wrote the book, Food and the Emotional Connection. I knew that I am an emotional eater. I have been since I've been a little kid. And when I got all that, it was like, whoa, how did I not know that? Like, I just feel like such a num-num. How did I not know that? But again, it just gets at a deeper level where you can just really see the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. So meditation is, I want to touch on that one because to me, it seems like the reason meditation can put you in touch with that intuitive wisdom, what I like to call the great teacher that, kind of instructs you from inside yourself, is that the mind gets in the way of it. And so by quieting the mind, you can perceive more clearly what this inner wisdom is telling you. Whereas in normal states of consciousness, the mind is constantly making noise. And then it's really hard to pick out the wisdom from the bullshit.
Yeah. And the mind wants to solve a problem. So that's what it does that quite well. And sometimes it's really helpful that it does do that. But when you're trying to solve a health issue through the mind, it can only do what it can do. It can't get you to a deeper level like I got in that experience, where I could really see the truth of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and again, I've had that issue my whole life. And all of a sudden, just one, 2-3 hour session, and it's like, holy crap, that totally changed my life. And after that, I'd lost 30 pounds. And not even planning on doing that, but I needed to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
And the reflux is it's gonzos.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's
Again,
wild.
It's that intuitive sense. And again, because I was perseverating about how to fix it, that doesn't work.
Right.
You got to let go and allow that inner knowing to come, and then it will tell you what you need to do and what's the best for you. But your brain is it's the one that created it in the first place, So,
a lot of the time. Yeah. The mind. Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine recently and I said, the mind's a problem solving tool. If it doesn't have a problem to solve, it will start creating problems. And then those problems, the mind can't solve because it created them. So that's when you have to go deeper, right?
Yes.
And those mind created problems can have physical consequences.
Yes.
Right? Like your beliefs, your deeply held beliefs can actually have an effect on your physical health. So sometimes, I think, again, because of our external focus, when we have a physical illness, we immediately seek external remedies. But a lot of the times those physical illnesses are actually self-generated. They're born of something that's inside of us psychologically.
And I think it is a bigger thing as well. I mean, I think there's all about, our soil erosion and the way we feed ourselves. And I mean, the standard American diet the acronym for it is SAD. And so
it is sad.
Yeah. So you look, there's so many, and the pollution and everything that has an impact as well.
Yeah.
But then again, you can do something about that. I mean, again, eating differently and growing your own food, buying locally through markets as best you can, and just, like eating a very different diet. Like Candace, who is your wife, is just the most amazing person at that. I mean, I've written the book about it, but I ask her lots of questions because she's got such amazing kind of, not control isn't the right word, but sense of purpose around it that I so admire. Yeah. And she's pretty tuned in about what her body needs.
Yeah, she's good at knowing what's good for her and what's not, for sure. And things have shifted for her as well over the years, I think, because again, she started off being focused entirely on diet and external things, and that drew her deeper within herself. And now that she's actually made some inner work, some of her dietary things have shifted. She can eat certain
Yes.
things that she couldn't eat before.
Yeah.
So that's interesting as well. It wasn't purely what she was putting in her body, it was also what she was putting in her mind.
Yes. Yeah. Very much so. And I mean, like once I healed my illness, all the things that I couldn't eat for 2 years, I ate everything. I had no trouble. I mean, there's certain things I don't do a lot of vinegar and
Yeah.
acidy stuff, but I eat whatever I want to eat.
Yeah.
And I have for 25 years.
Wow. Yeah, that's wild. And again, to me, the craziest part about that whole story is that, like, in another life, you have been living the last 25 years of your life without a bladder. Like, from one
Right.
decision, from just going with, and not only one decision, the decision that was being thrust upon you by your doctor, who supposedly knows
Yes.
best about your health, right? So
Mhm.
you said no thanks to the one person that everyone trusts when it comes down
Yes.
to healthcare, right?
Yep.
And you decided to strike out into the unknown,
Yep.
and you still managed to, again, remedy this thing.
And he was really good about it. I mean, he was amazed. He said, I can't believe you're where you're at. Like, nobody heals from this. Nobody. And he said, I'm giving people your name. And he did, but nobody was willing to go. And that's why I want to go. And the next step is about the 3 C's
Mm-hmm.
of healing. And it's consistency. So if you are, and Candace is awesome at this, way better than me. If you're going to change your diet, then do it.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to be consistent about what you're going to do. If you're going to try to meditate, you want to calm your mind down, you have to do it. You have to be
Consistently.
consistently. You can't just do it once a week and then think, well, it's going to change everything. No, it's not.
Yeah.
And being really courageous. I mean, to me, that was the big thing. Like you said, okay, like I'm totally going against what the doctor said. And I'm on my own turf here because I didn't know anybody then that knew anything about this. I didn't know anything about nutrition. I didn't know anything. And so it was scary. And I think for me, it took a lot of courage to just say, no, I'm not going to listen to everybody, and all my friends were saying, you can't do this. And I thought, oh, I hear you. And so it takes the courage, consistency, and it's not awful. I've forgotten what the third C is.
Yeah, it's okay. It's good. I like the first two.
Yeah. I had it down there, but I forgot. So yeah, courage and consistency, and just to really setting the course for yourself, and really checking in on where you're at and how you're doing about that. And not listening. Don't listen. Just listen to within.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's important to reference the external world, and other people and their opinions and their knowledge, but ultimately the final decision has to come from within yourself. And take into account everything that you're seeing and hearing and feeling, and make the best decision based on that.
And the other, I do remember the third C, it's commitment.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
yeah. So making a commitment to yourself that you are going to change your habits, and that you're committed to wellness. You're committed to whatever it takes to make this illness disappear and part of your past.
Yeah, committed to doing what it takes. And that's what you mentioned, like some of these patients that your doctor referred to you after you had healed yourself. You talked to them, but none of them, or at least none, not one that you know of, was willing to follow your prescription, or at least follow what you did to heal yourself.
Yeah. And because the main thing was you can't drink any Pepsi.
Wow, that was the deal breaker.
That was the deal breaker for almost all of them. And you can't drink alcohol.
Yeah.
No
I can see.
no
No, that one's a bit tougher. But yes, I can see both of those. Yeah, but I mean, how much are you suffering from this illness? Like, was it a pleasant thing to have, Kressa?
It was horrible. It was like, it's like pouring lemon juice on a raw burn. That's what it felt like all the time. And you couldn't go anywhere because you had to know where all the bathrooms were. Yeah, it was horrible. And the treatments were as horrible. So, the treatments weren't an answer because they didn't really have a treatment. I mean, chronic illnesses nowadays, I think what's really interesting when I really enjoy listening to Zach Bush, Dr. Zach Bush. And one of the things that he talks about is that even in medical school, they were never taught that your body can heal itself, that's a foreign concept in the medical field.
Seems like an important detail.
Well, yeah, pretty important to me. And he said that when he started reading about, he read other people's books about all how the body can heal itself. And he was just like shocked that we never learned this in medical school.
Mm.
And so it's, again, for them, the answer is it has to be external. It's either give you a pill or something. But again, with chronic illness, all it's going to do maybe helps with the symptoms, but it's not going to get to the root cause.
Yeah.
And the
Right.
root cause, again, is a holistic approach. It's not just the food. It's not just the mind. It's everything. It's mind, body, spirit. And you have to really be willing to dig into all those areas.
Yeah.
And most
Yeah,
people
because I
don't
think,
want to do that.
yeah, any illness is going to have a physical, a mental, and a spiritual component to it. I mean,
Yes.
it transcends the, because those three things are not separate. Mind,
Yep.
body, and spirit are one, obviously. We talk about them as separate things because it's helpful and it helps us to kind of conceptualize it. But ultimately, an illness in your body is also in your mind and in your spirit, because those things
Yes.
are all one.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's interesting that the doctors don't know that the human body is capable of healing itself. And to me, that revelation seems to be closely connected to the fact that your food can be your medicine.
Yes.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's something else that they don't, despite the fact that the founder of Western medicine, Hippocrates, said, let thy food be thy medicine. From what I understand, that's not a significant portion of med school. They don't talk about health and nutrition in that sense. So if you feed the body the right things, it can heal itself, I think.
Yeah.
What it comes down
but I think it is changing. There's lots of doctors out there now, integrative doctors, and people that are understanding holistic approach, people like Dr. Zach Bush, who looking at the bigger scheme of things and looking at how, how our whole body interconnects and about our microbiome in our gut. And so I think we are changing.
Yeah.
And we need to change.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's more of these holistic doctors, right? That they take Western medicine, Eastern medicine, they take all these different approaches and they integrate them into one. And to me, that makes the most sense, because why would you limit yourself to one single discipline or approach?
Yeah.
It's the same with psychology too. I mean, if you go to see a therapist and he's like a psychoanalyst and he doesn't know anything about like cognitive behavioral therapy or like any of the other sort of schools of therapy that are out there, you're not going to get the best care, because this person only has one set of tools to help you with. And if your particular issue is beyond those tools, he's not going to be able to do, or she's not going to be able to do much for you. It's the same with Western medicine. They have a toolkit. It's very effective for acute care and other things like that, surgery and things of that nature. But there are other things where, like chronic illness, for example, where it doesn't seem to really get to the root of the matter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our medical model is exemplary in so many ways, but there are some things that I think need to have a different kind of approach than just giving some kind of prescription. And we do that too easily. I mean, one of the classic things I read I watched this video the other day was about that fantastic fungi. I love that movie. I watched it twice.
Oh yeah, it's a great documentary.
And one of the things they talk about that using psilocybin in PTSD or in mental illnesses, and that sometimes some cures can be had within 2 or 3 sessions of psilocybin mushroom. Instead, and the medical model is to give you Prozac or whatever for
the rest of your life.
But again, what he said was really wonderful, is that, the medical system or our big pharma isn't going to make any money out of that.
No, it's too effective.
It's too effective, right?
It works too well. Yeah. Well, and I mean, you and I have seen it firsthand with different groups that we've worked with, and people having like what you had with food and your issues around food, and how that shifted your reflux instantly and changed your whole, like we've seen that with other people as well, where one experience and they're changed like permanently. It's not this like fickle thing that comes and goes. It's like, no, this person will never forget what they saw and experienced today. It's with them for life, and they're always gonna be able to draw from it. And yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing stuff.
And it's too bad that's been so squashed. I mean, again, in the 60s, there was all this Ram Dass had brought a lot of that and about different psychedelics and stuff and how they can help. And then, we got war on drugs and pushed all that down. And now they're starting to do more research on it, which is wonderful. But again, it's in nature. It's part of us.
Yeah.
Our wonderful universe has given us what we need to heal ourselves. It's all here.
Yeah. Well, in some of these plants like cannabis, we literally have receptors inside of us that like connect with the chemicals in this plant. So we have a symbiotic relationship with them, which means we evolve with them, we co-evolve with them. So yeah, instead of doing something like that, we push pharmaceuticals that are completely lab made, and we don't have any real understanding of the long-term effects of these things on people. But yet these other medicines that we've been interacting with for thousands of years, no, those things are evil and terrible. And let's make them illegal because they're too effective, as you said.
Well, and even, supplements and stuff. When I was really depressed about 25 years ago, a little bit less than that, when my marriage ended and stuff, and I was pretty devastated. And I got into depression. That was something that was, ran in our family. My mother had a lot of issues. And I did it purely, meditation was one, but I did it purely by high doses of niacin.
Wow.
And, the whole the flushing kind, which is challenging. But I just took high doses of that and, again, went within what was really challenging me inside. And I moved through that, and I've never been depressed since.
Yeah. And so what was the connection with niacin? What made you go with that as a potential remedy?
Well, there's lots of support around that. There's actually a whole book. I started studying nutrition. So I became a holistic nutritionist, and there is one whole book on supplements and depression and just about the histamine effect. And it's kind of complicated, but they recommended the niacin. So I thought, well, I'm going to give it a shot. And sure enough. And again, I did some other things around all that too. And I really went within. And I moved right past that. And I think I've had periods when I felt down and stuff, but I've never been depressed since.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the down periods happen to everybody, I think. I don't know anybody that's exempt from those, but there's a big difference between being down for a few hours or a few days and then being like in a deep, dark pit of depression. Yeah.
And it's horrible. I mean, you don't know how you're ever going to come out of it. So, so again, looking at nature and all the natural things that can support us in moving past some of our challenges. And again, doesn't come, some of that can come from the mind. Again, I'd studied and I thought, okay. But again, it was also an intuitive sense that I need to do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And the mind is involved. It's not to say that the mind has no place or no part in the process of healing. It's just that it can't lead the way.
Yes.
It can't be in charge, because then that's basically the ego. Right. What you're talking about. So the ego can't be in charge of healing. It has to be subservient to the process. It can't be the one trying to lead the process. But yeah, it has a place, obviously, when you're studying and trying to retain information and understand nutrition or anything, meditation, whatever, philosophy. The mind is very useful, and it's got to be a part of it.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It can't rule the roost, because when it rules the roost, it has its own way.
Yeah.
Usually you end up spinning and spinning.
Circular. Yeah. It's very circular. I've seen it in myself and in others so many times, but yeah, it's like, oh, look, we're back at the start. How did we get here again? Right. Oh man, we just did a full lap around the problems. All right. But I never thought about it like this before, but recently when we were helping a friend, I realized that it's not necessarily a bad thing. If you catch yourself, going in circles, because then at least you have a good, you've basically outlined the circumference of your problems. And now you know where to look. That's the circle. Now go into the circle, go within, right? Again, to kind of, reiterate the theme of this episode. You have to go into the circle. You can't just keep going around it.
Yes.
But yeah. And so these are things that can help us go deeper within into the circle. Psilocybin, as you mentioned, meditation. I think journaling is quite helpful as well. It's something that I know that you practice as well. It helps
Yes.
to externalize your thoughts and maybe gain greater insight. Again, going deeper within yourself through reading what you're putting down, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I find that very helpful. And talking, with like-minded people and people that understand that there's a different way of looking at things than the external, and who can give you, like you and I've had fascinating conversations over and over again. And I've learned a lot from that. And I hope you've learned a bit as
Yeah. Oh,
well.
absolutely.
It's been a two-way street here. And so I think that's really very valuable. And with other friends too, who can sometimes see outside of yourself. I had a friend, I had some issue with something, and she saw a totally different part of it. It was like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Different
So
perspective.
yeah, so that was, I thought, wow, I'm going to think about that for sure. Thank you. So I think that's really helpful when you chatting with different folks and just people that really value who you are and understand that you have a different way of looking at things than the norm, and
Yeah.
don't follow the mainstream necessarily.
Yeah, necessarily. And I mean, it's okay for these people that that help you to have different views, as long as they respect yours,
Yes.
right? I think that's key. I think, you can have, like you said, a friend with a different perspective, and that perspective might be very helpful. In fact, I think it would be, because anytime you can see beyond your own point of view, as long as you're not ego driven and you get triggered by
Yeah.
different viewpoints, anytime you can expand your views to include, other people's points of view, I think it's good. But yeah, the important thing is that they honor and respect your views, even if they disagree with you, and then they can give you some very helpful feedback for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
talk therapy.
Yeah, and I think that's when you're with folks that really honor and value who you are, then there automatically, to me, is that respect.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things that you mentioned in your email as well that I wanted to touch on quickly, was the quality of our soil. And I think that's
Okay.
something you picked up from Zach Bush, but
Yeah.
the quality of our soil and its impact on the quality of our food. So how does that play into healing in your opinion?
Well, I've known about this actually for a long time. He just brought it up when I did holistic nutrition back in the 90s, and I graduated in 97. He was, I can't remember his name now. He had fantastic book, and he talked all about how the soil, all the pesticides that we're using. And again, all the food that we bring has, whatever bacteria and stuff, and that we digest, and we have this biome, this whole incredible cellular communication going on in with all the bacteria and all the stuff that goes on in our gut.
Mhm.
And a lot of us, our guts are really having trouble. Everybody knows about the leaky gut syndrome. I'm sure a lot of people do, but leaky gut syndrome. And that when that barrier in the gut is gone, that's what leaky gut is. It gets into the bloodstream, and then you get all kinds of challenges. And that's where a lot of illness, I think, comes from, is because then we get inflammation, and that blood barrier is no longer protected,
Mhm.
and we can get all kinds of illness from that. So I think a lot of it comes, it's a holistic thing. It's not
Mhm.
just the soil, but I think that's a part we don't understand. And I think, just with that's why I eat organic as much as I can.
Yeah.
Try to grow a few little things in the backyard, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And shop at local markets. When I always ask, do you use pesticides and herbicides? No, they don't. And that's where I try to get most of my food, so that we know what's going into our bodies.
Right.
And again, the other thing is antibiotics. So all, huge use of antibiotics, and all the animals that are fed antibiotics. So again, that destroys all the good microbiome in our gut,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
because it kills all that,
Yeah.
right?
It's
So,
indiscriminate.
antibiotics kill everything. They don't kill the bad thing. They kill all the good stuff.
That's right. Yeah. Wow. So I mean, overuse of
Antibiotics.
antibiotics. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's going to contribute to this stripping away of the layer of the gut that you're describing, where there's
Yeah.
all this rich microbiome and very important to our mental health.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like our own wireless system. I mean,
Mhm.
one of the things, I love his analogy. He uses the wireless system. We have a wireless system within our gut, and that when we have some kind of disease, obviously communication is not happening, proper
Yep.
communication. And that's why I think, again, putting in what the body does need. um, really good food and good nutrition. And sugar is one of the huge issues in our society. And I remember when I taught nutrition in Ontario, I said, if we could just eliminate one thing from our society, pop, we would change so much of our health. Like,
Wow.
it would be huge.
Yeah.
Especially in Ontario. Here it's different. I find, and when I moved to BC, that's one of the reasons I moved to BC. It's not the consumption, I don't think, is as high. But Ontario, where I live, rural Ontario, everybody drank Pepsi and Coke all the time.
Wow. Yeah, I remember my parents, well, my dad, I think, mostly drinking a lot of pop, but I, for some reason, never got into it. I feel really blessed because it just wasn't my thing. And now I know so many people who are like addicted, like straight up addicted to pop, like drinking liters of it a day. It's like, holy shit. I'm glad I never got on that train, you know?
Well, I thank my mother for that. I mean, I remember her saying that you can clean rust off a car with Coke. I remember her telling me that when I was a little kid. I thought, ooh, I'm not drinking that.
Scarred you. Yeah, the penny, right? Yeah. You clean your pennies with it. Yeah, that can't be good for you at all.
Yeah. So I'm thank her for that, because I never was interested in pop. I mean, I think I've had ginger ale a few times or something. Yeah. But yeah, and I never was like a rum and Coke drink. I didn't drink a lot of hard liquor anyway. So yeah.
Yeah, pop seems like a bit of a scourge. And in this time of public health, crises like what we're having right now, you'd think there'd be more dialogue around what we're discussing here about, at the very least, about the food, because again, we're talking about the external fixation. Food is still part of the external world. So, we could still be externally focused and talking about what we're putting into our bodies. That would be a good conversation to have right now, when apparently with COVID too, I mean, obesity and all these different comorbidities seem to play a huge part in people's outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. And nobody's talking about, like vitamin D and zinc and all those things. There's a fabulous spray that I use all the time that's kind of a preventative, and it's called Xlear, and it has xylitol in it and grapeseed extract. Mm-hmm. I use it all the time. And there's so many natural things that we could be doing that has been provided to us by our earth, and that would help us. Mm-hmm. But,
yeah. It is what it is. There's people talking about it. It's just not mainstream, but there are people, I think, talking about it and trying.
Oh, for sure, but not mainstream. You don't hear health people saying, "Well, you should be upping your vitamin D right now." No, you don't hear any.
Yeah, there's a guy that I follow on YouTube, and he's been putting out a lot of good content about like research overseas that's been coming out about specifically around exercise and its effects on the pandemic and people's outcomes, right, with COVID. And he keeps talking about how like why isn't this being published everywhere? Why isn't everyone talking about this? It's like, because the results are pretty like staggering. Like, I think it's like 140 minutes of exercise a week showed like, I don't know, it was like 30 to 40% decrease in people getting COVID. And then the ones that got it, their symptoms were like way milder. Like, I can't remember the specifics, but I'll put a link to the video in the description of this video.
Yeah.
And the guy keeps putting out research about this kind of stuff. And it's like
fascinating.
And he always says, why, like I went on CNN and I typed in fitness, and the last piece that they put out on fitness is 6 years ago. Like he's like trying to find somebody running with it, and nobody in the mainstream media talks about these types of studies, right? Because it's not the easy way out.
Because it doesn't make money.
And you have to actually, and as the person, you have to actually get off your ass. Like you said, stop drinking 5 gallons of Coke every day, start eating some vegetables and some fruit, and go out and do something, move your body for 140 minutes a week. That's not a lot. It's not a lot. That's like 4 workouts, like 30-minute workouts, or, just over that, right? It's not a lot at all.
And for mental health, it's critical.
Mm-hmm.
But again, yeah. And I think there's more, like you said, there's more information out now than there was before. I mean, when I started this journey, there was nothing out there, not very much.
Yeah.
And there was no internet, so there was no Googling anything,
Yeah. Well, I can't imagine.
So it was just, again, that's why the inner wisdom going within was so important, because again, I'm connected to the universe, and it has all kinds of information that when I quiet that brain of mine and I can tap into that.
Yeah,
I really believe that. Some of the
absolutely.
ideas that came to me was like, why would I do that? No, that's what you need to do. Okay, all right, okay. And
Can't hurt to try.
and most of the time it was, yeah, it worked.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And that's the other thing too, is with our external focus, we're kind of conditioned not to trust ourselves and to seek all of our
Yes.
validation and confirmation from other people or authority figures, whether it's you know, the Center for Disease Control or the government or the media or your doctor. And so it's like, for most people, what you did, you know, trusting that inner voice, trusting that inner wisdom over external sources, it would have looked like pure madness, would have made no sense to people.
Well, and I was told that quite often, you're not being realistic. I said, okay, that's what you think. That's not what I'm going to heal this no matter what. I know I'm going to. And again, it's when you have a belief system too around that, that you believe in yourself and you believe that, yeah, I'm going to do this. Then you're going to do it.
Yeah. Well, and the belief isn't like a blind belief. You've proven it to yourself. Like that's you have a reason to believe in yourself. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You've seen that you're capable of resolving these things. Maybe not 100% on your own, but primarily on your own. Yeah, it's crazy to me. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I think having conversations like these and putting them out there, the people that don't think we're nutso, they'll get something out of it. And you know, it can be done. Until you, and then obviously Candace, I didn't believe, or even, yeah, I didn't believe that you could just heal yourself. I didn't believe that you could just go within and do inner work and that would make things better. And then I met you and you you know, told me your story and I was like, holy crap, that's amazing. I read your book. And then Candace was going through some health stuff, and then you came into her life, and then she started doing it. And now I've seen multiple people, and I've met others who have done similar things. And it's like, you know, until you see it firsthand, it's going to be hard to believe, because again, everything we've been told, everything we've been conditioned to believe goes against that.
Yes, absolutely.
So I don't blame anybody for thinking, you know, we're crazy for having this conversation, or what we're saying is nuts. I don't blame anybody for feeling that way, because yeah, I felt that way too. Not that long ago, I would have thought this was crazy.
Yeah. But when you've had the experience yourself, and now I've had it even with this, you know, the acid reflux, which was bothering me for so long, and like I can't believe it's totally gone. Like
Yeah.
no issues at all. Like now I'm, you know, more careful. I've created some good habits around all that too. But
Yeah.
it's like, and again, I did rely on some external sources for sure. But again, it was that intuitive changing inside myself to see, no, that food doesn't bring you love and comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And you're sick.
Yeah. Right.
So there's certain kinds of foods that I was eating, and I'm like a sugar I'm addicted to sugar. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to stay away from the stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Until you can be disciplined enough to do it in moderation, I suppose.
Yeah, and I'm pretty good at now. I can do it in moderation.
Yeah.
You know, got a little off track last week, but now I'm back on track again. So
Yeah.
yeah,
As long as you
it's
keep
a
getting back
journey.
on the track, right? Yeah.
Yes,
It's a journey. Yeah.
There's no destination. It's just a journey.
Yeah. Very true. Wow. Yeah. So, I mean, so if you were talking to someone right now who was going through some kind of chronic illness, like what you went through, like what Candace went through, and they've tried everything, they're at their wit's end, what would be your sort of number one recommendation to them? What would you advise them?
I think first I would advise them to quiet their mind, to try practicing some quieting, you know, meditation, maybe yoga, whatever is out there, trying to do something that'll help them quiet that loop that's going on, and so that they can see things more or hear things more clearly. And again, I think doing the experiences like with psilocybin mushrooms, that's a wonderful option as well. I think sometimes that takes people right to the core of what the issue is.
Certainly seen that happen many times. Yeah.
Yeah, and really do some investigation about what's really going on. What is your truth?
Yeah. Yeah. And good start. Yeah. And then I think from that process, it seems like if there are external things they could be doing, those will come out of that sort of
Yes.
process of quieting the mind and going deeper within, right? That's when some of that intuitive knowing may come to the surface.
Yeah. And for me, I mean, I still do external things, like I go to a chiropractor, I go get massage, I do those kind of things to just keep things more even keeled, and or if I'm a little bit off or something, I'll do that. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
But
just
that's what you talked about though, right? I mean, it's mind, body, and spirit. So I think
yeah,
right now most people are 100% focused on the body
yes,
and thinking that the entire illness is in the body and that the mind and the spirit are not involved, right? And what you're basically saying is it's not that you ignore the body or the body isn't involved in the illness, it's that there's more to it than that. And if you only focus on one aspect of it, it's not going to lead to long-term healing.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
that makes perfect sense. Yeah. And certainly aligns with what I've seen myself and what I've experienced. Yeah, you have to have a balance between the three. Otherwise things don't go very well in one area or another. You might be doing really well physically, but maybe you're depressed, maybe you have no zest for life or whatever. So yeah, I think it's definitely the three-prong approach.
Before we complete, I just want to add one more thing too that I see as so important to our overall well-being is about connection.
Hmm.
And I saw this in Africa so clearly, the tribe that we go to, the Maasai people, they are always together and they support each other. And a baby will die in one boma and the whole village goes and what do they need and brings things. We aren't in such an isolation society. We are so isolated, and you see this especially with seniors. And I think for our overall well-being, we need to connect.
Mm-hmm.
We
Yeah.
need to connect, and we need to be kind, and we need to love each other and support each other, no matter what your belief systems are.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter. That frees our soul when we connect with people.
Yeah.
Like when I'm with you and Candace and a lot of my friends that feel away, like it just nurtures me, I know that I'm valued and cared for. And I think that's what brings wellness and health. And yes, it's nutrition and all those other wonderful things, but I think we need to connect at a core level.
Yeah. Well, and I think if we're dealing with the trinity of mind, body, spirit, connection is the spirit, right? It feeds
Yes.
the spirit, and that's it's hard to describe, but without that, it's like things are lifeless, and there's something missing. There's a spark missing. So, good point. Definitely important to have connection, to cultivate connection.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Awesome. Well, that was lovely. Thank you very much for this
Thank
little
you.
Saturday afternoon chit chat. I think we got to everything on the list.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any parting words for the audience, Kressa?
No, just be kind and love yourself and love each other. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Simple, sometimes challenging, but
Yeah.
always worth striving for. That's what I would say to that. So, well, thank you very much, Kressa.
Well, thank you, Ollie,
All
always.
right. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.